This comes from Tommy. Tommy writes, Terry and his agent made a miscalculation requesting a trade. Fan sentiment is flipping. A majority of social media posts now side with the team or speak negatively of Terry's approach. I blame his agent. Terry's not getting Metcalf's deal, and all their tactics, the 30-minute whiny press conference and trade request, have done all they've done is sour fan sentiment on him. Terry deserves to seek a raise, but the process has been poorly handled by his team. Holding in is fine, but after the last preseason game, Terry needs to decide whether to take the latest offer from the team or bet on himself for the 2027 offseason following a 2026 franchise tag. That's it. Stop talking publicly about this. He needs better people in his corner. That from Tommy. So, there's part of this that I agree with, and part of it I'm not sure about. And I do want to focus on whether or not fan sentiment is flipping. First of all, I don't know if there's a flip actually to be had. I'll get to that in a moment. I do think his agent, who has not necessarily had clients like Terry, and his group of clients tend to be smaller clients, some certainly name players. But this will be, I think, one of, if not the biggest deals he's ever done. I don't know if it's him. I've talked about this for a month. I started to hear, whispers about maybe Terry not getting the best advice. But, these are also things that, unless you're really in it, you don't really know. If Terry's got total trust and he's been his guy for a while, I do think that the press conference, the marathon press conference from a few weeks ago, was a terrible idea. And when I say terrible idea, not that Terry speaking publicly for the first time was a terrible idea, but it should have been more of a statement and no more than like 3 minutes of questions and then move on. That thing got sideways, and there was nobody there from the team to kind of protect him in that scenario. We talked about that when it happened. And look, with respect to Tommy's last part, yeah, I think the talking's done. He got to that last stage, trade request. The next line to cross would be to hold out when the regular season begins. Will he do that? I don't think he will. I don't think it benefits him. I don't think it increases his leverage, although, as we've discussed, it's probably the only chance of him gaining any kind of leverage financially. And that scenario would unfold with the team playing very poorly offensively, having injuries at receiver, and it becomes very clear that they need Terry McLaurin. I think we all know they need him, but how much do they need him? If he holds out, it could work against him as well, because if the offense goes out there and it's humming without him, and Deebo Samuel is lighting it up all over the field, and Noah Brown's healthy, and Luke McCaffrey comes on and Gallup's beating people deep, that could work against him. But this is what I wanted to focus on as it relates to this. So about 2.5 weeks ago, we did a call segment, and more than a call segment, call segments, plural. But I put out a Twitter poll, Team Terry or Team Front Office? Whose side are you on? And that was before camp started. That was before he held out and then held in and then asked for a trade. It's also before some of the reporting that, sort of now is out there with respect to what he's asked for, and maybe even some of the reporting, depending on what you believe. I mean, Stephen A. had, what Washington had offered, but there's some information as to how wide this gap is based on, some reporting, Schefter on, Terry's desire, and Stephen A. on Washington's offer. And I'm curious as to whether or not Tommy's right. First of all, the results 2.5 weeks ago on my Twitter poll with thousands of votes, 50-50, dead even. 50% team front office, 50% team Terry. That was surprising to me. I really, in that moment, thought it was going to be 70-30 team Terry. I really did. But I am curious to find out where it is now, because if Tommy's right, and look, a majority of social media posts, as he writes, now side with the team and speak negatively of Terry's approach. I've seen some of that. I'm not auditing it, so I'm not counting how much of it, is against Terry versus, for Terry. And, we all as adults realize that social media is a small reflection of what the overall fan base thinks. But is he right? Is fan sentiment now flipping towards the team? It was 50-50 with a rather healthy sized polling or surveying number, in the thousands. So, you give your plus or minus 3 on the survey, but it's probably pretty close, especially given that, the audience of this radio station is Washington football fans more than it is anything else. So at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980, where are you? You don't have to tell me where you were, but if you want to, that's fine also, especially if you've switched. But are you Team Terry on this or Team Front Office? I am in the same spot that I've been really since it became clear that this was becoming, for the lack of a better description, contentious, that it wasn't going to be a smooth process. Certainly the process when Terry expressed frustration for the first time via his agent leaking to various people back in June, I guess it was, I thought it was, look, this is posturing. This is going to get worked out. We did consider all the while that in San Francisco, there's been a recent history of waiting it out and getting these deals done very late, whether it's Bosa or Kittle or Ayuk, or we're missing one or two, Trent Williams. But did Adam Peters bring that style of negotiating to Washington? But as it's gone on, it's gotten a bit more contentious, a bit uglier, with every, passing day or passing week. And now we are at a true standoff, a true stalemate. Terry's doing the thing in which he is not getting fined right now, I don't believe. I think as a hold-in, you can't get fined, especially if you have an ankle injury, in air quotes. But I have been team front office on this from the start, and I'm still team front office. Not, maybe slightly more emphatic on team front office. I actually have this sense. Part of it is because I think it aligns with the way I think. So when it aligns with the way you think, you're always going to feel a little bit better about the position. And what I mean by that is I think they've got really good business chops as it relates to this situation, and I think they're evaluating it the right way. That's from afar. I don't know specifically inside that building what, Sosna and Newmark and Peters are saying, like, this is it. We're not going above 26 million, 60 guaranteed a year for a, 4-year deal or whatever it would be, because he's just not who he thinks he is. Or it's more, he's just way out of line with what he's asking. He's got to come down and meet us somewhere in the middle. I don't know where that is specifically, but I do think from afar, my hunch is that they're evaluating the player the way I would. Not that they're not, considering what he is intangible wise. Great guy, great teammate, great in the locker room, big part of their culture, change, their recalibration, which got recalibrated. They recalibrated the recalibration midway through last year when they realized they had gotten it right with the quarterback and they had a chance to make a run. And now they're in a window. And, the argument that, hey, you're in a window here, like, stop, messing around, just get him signed, overpay him if you have to. I'm not in favor of overpaying him dramatically. I just think that's a bad precedent. I don't want them to do that. And I agree with them and their approach. Am I okay with a slight overpayment, for a guy that's going to go turn 30 years old and is more like the 10th, 11th, or 12th best receiver in the game, not the third or fourth best receiver in the game? I'm fine if they pay him more like the sixth or seventh best receiver in the game. A slight overpayment, but not a massive overpayment. I am team front office still, and maybe just a little bit stronger in my feeling about being team front office.